Hello, everyone. Um, I'm Maya Mandali Mendrilla, and I'm incredibly grateful to be here with Bandana Tewari, who is one of the most inspiring and influential people in the fashion world today. She is one of the Business of Fashion 500 stars, and I'm really, really honored that she agreed to be one of my mentors in the designer residency. Welcome, Bandana.
Thank you. Thank you for being with me and whoever is listening. Um, it's my privilege, and I think you gave me a massive compliment. And I humbly have to tell you that I live in a jungle in Bali and do my little bit for mindfulness in the fashion industry. And this is what I find extremely interesting about your brand is we have a lot in common. I know that you traveled to India. India has influenced you. Your design, your sculptural design have a very sort of a spiritual, compassionate ideals behind the design philosophy. And I lived in India forever. I'm Nepalese, so I'm a mountain goat from the Himalayas, but I was educated, raised, I feel very much Indian. So let's start with that. Let's start with how your design has been influenced by a culture that is somehow very different from where you come from.
Well, thank you for asking. I've since the early 90s, I've been pursuing a brand that is like an expression of my inner search. After reading a library of books, I would say, and not exaggerating, I found myself very much interested to actually travel to India and discover in person the impressions that I've received from reading some of the works that most inspired me from Indian classics and its great literary and spiritual heritage. So that was my entrance. I sat on a plane, and there I was in the wonderful atmosphere that's quite unique in the world, I would say.
Right.
It deepened some of my understandings even more, and I wouldn't. At that moment, I would say that the depth of India is actually the depth found in the whole world. Indeed, if we look more inside and try to discover.
What I find interesting with your work is also that, because I come from India, the idea of clothing is quite different from, let's say, the Western world. I'm not saying India is not fast moving into a very consumerist, and not just India, the entire Indian subcontinent. These are developing nations, and they want fast fashion because that's their idea of urbanization. But it's still a country that wears a 4,000, 5,000-year-old garment as it was worn then. Like, let's talk about the sari. And the symbolism that comes with clothing, the symbolism in the kind of embroidery, the prints, the weaving that's done, has a lot to do about identity, has a lot to do with, if I can even extend it to spiritual identity. So the creator put in a lot of his or her own ideals and philosophies in the weave, so that when you and I wear it, we take in that energy of that cloth. So I want to know, is that the reason why the idea of mandalas and certain symbolism in your clothing has played a significant role?
Yes, indeed it does, because I've developed a practice in our atelier, which is called Yantra Couture. And this designing method uses a lot of select ancient sciences like the Vastu architecture or Ayurveda, and applies it to the creation of sculptural garments. in order for the garments to holistically improve the quality of the feeling of the harmony of the person's body when wearing those garments. If one looks at Vastu architecture and how it's applied on, for example, the construction of dwellings, and one considers their own body as a dwelling of themselves, then one would mandalas, for example, are essential in Vastu architecture, where they're placed in the house, or even certain structures are all built in the shape of mandalas. So then the garments that I create in the atelier are also like that, meant to improve the quality of life.
I love this idea so much, because then you start looking at clothes as something that is holistic. You know, we are so good at looking after our bodies in terms of what we eat and what we're going to put into our bodies. You know, you can become vegetarian, you can be vegan, we go on intermittent fasting. We are so careful about what we put into our bodies, yet every day we are being touched by the clothes that we wear, and we are so dismissive about the kind of quality, what kind of texture that is touching our bodies day in and day out. And we forget the impact of what it must do to our bodies, because there is a difference between wearing something that is organic and something that is polyester. And we forget that because we think fashion is so outwardly, it is so superficial that we don't take that into consideration. So how do you tell your client? How do you communicate this idea, which is a profound idea, that what you wear on your body is as important as what you are thinking in your mind and consuming in your body?
Yeah, I personally don't practice so much as a designer and an artist direct verbal communication. Some yet, but mostly I just speak to through the work, and subtly through poetry and inspiration. And I've had experience that actually I don't really have to say much once the garment is created, either as a sculpture or something that perhaps somebody that is a friend might wear. Then the person feels that there's something different about this garment. And of course, if people inquire, I'm very happy to explain the intricacies, not everything, because some things are quite secret about the atelier, about the method. But I'm quite happy to explain, and I believe in the that everybody has a little energetic television in the heart, kind of. And when they come, yes, when they come across such a garment that's created with these principles in mind, then they will simply feel it. There's necessary, I think, at least from my part.
Yeah, I also feel that with
words, like you, for example, it really means a lot to me.
Right. So it also makes me think about, especially now, you know, with COVID, we're not going to be traveling as much in the future. If we travel, we're going to be very careful about where we go. We'll probably travel to a place and stay a longer time and immerse ourselves a little bit more deeply, because we now know the value of travel, right? So, oh, I was there for 2 nights and I went there for 3 nights. I think if I'm going to make an effort to go to Mexico, I would want to be able to immerse myself. So I would like to know that moving forward, I feel, in my opinion, culture is going to be such a big part of the creative process. And what I mean by that is, with fast fashion, our whole world became globalized and homogenized. We became an entire earth full of hoodies and jeans and, flip-flops. I mean, everyone, no matter where you go, we had that uniform that didn't distinguish between my culture and your culture. But now, I think there's value of culture in knowing that we are different and that we should appreciate that. Do you feel that this is showing people that we are different better than saying we are all the same? Because I'm talking about globalization versus, I don't think globalization worked for us. Supply chains have dismantled because of globalization, and countries like Bangladesh are suffering right now because the supply chain is so warped. So I wonder if designers are going to think about their cultural immersion to be more important and to spread the message that how wonderful to be different. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely agree that there's first of all, I believe there's a need in a human being to be together. But then there's also a deep need to be different and to be appreciated as one is. And the more we spend time, perhaps like in certain situations, we are inspired to spend more time with ourselves, like right now. Then we discover more and more facets of our personalities and of our differences. And as human beings, we have a desire to show that, and for our friends and for others to appreciate that. And I think a certain unity in diversity might be something that could emerge from this, with a very important emphasis put on diversity, because otherwise, simple blend unity, I think it gets. It's not conducive to us respecting ourselves. And unless we respect ourselves, then we might not respect nature either, or the world, or be grateful for what we have. And then a certain feeling of dissatisfaction is quite a destructive feeling, like you described, I would say.
So this brings me to the topic of something that we never talked about in fast-paced pre-COVID times, which is, well, how can we bring mindfulness in the fashion industry? I live in Bali, and it's extraordinary island because it is a living entity of worship. Now, when I say worship, I'm not talking necessarily about religion. It is worship of nature. Just a couple of days back, there was a big ceremony in the island where they literally garland and ritualize and thank every machine, every car, every bicycle, every motorbike, anything that's got to do with machines. Is like you have to offer flowers and you pray, because they believe that there is no difference between animate and inanimate objects, because we are all subatomically, we're all made of the similar particles of carbon and hydrogen, nitrogen, what have you. So the common people here may not be thinking about it in terms of science, but they understand it as a natural animist force that governs them. And so what they wear, what cycle that they're on, what they are growing on their grounds is also interconnected. And because it's interconnected, they're very mindful of what they're consuming. So they will not give up their old rituals. They have to have the ceremonial clothes. And it's a living, and this is a living island of that level of mindfulness. And I really, really wonder, moving forward, how would you bring that sense of mindfulness into your business? How would you inculcate these wonderful, ideals into customers? because I don't think we're going to get many chances if we keep messing around and ruining the environment and not seeing the interconnectivity of things.
Yes, I agree with you. I've tried really sincerely to start with myself, actually, because if I personally don't understand what is happening around me, I also cannot imbibe that into the work. So that's why I did a lot of research, and I'm still basically never-endingly studying the nature of this world. So the more I study, the more the label and the intricacy of the work and of Yantra Couture develops with me. And what I've discovered so far is that I think the most important practice currently for my work is compassion. Compassion towards myself as a designer, as an artist, compassion towards the customers, creative compassion, fun compassion, um, and compassion towards the cloth, the process, towards the studio. I think everything wonderfully rests on compassion, and then all the good qualities of respect and gratitude and tenderness and all these can kind of stem like a tree from that compassion. And if if we on an individual level, each of us try to more and more and more develop that, because there's no end to that quality, then I think many things will change and improve. And what you've described is wonderful.
I love the word compassion because it's such a deep, it's a doing thing. To be compassionate means you have to show it. It doesn't just sit there hanging from a tree like a decoration, right? And I go around the world speaking, well, I used to go around the world in the past, speaking a lot about how we can use Mahatma Gandhi's principles in the luxury business. And one of the principles was called ahimsa, which is nonviolence, which is really a synonym for compassion. So Gandhi himself said, ahimsa or nonviolence is not a garment that you put on and off at will. Its seat is in the heart and it must always remain there. So the idea of ahimsa or nonviolence is very related to a compassionate way of living. And I love what you said, be compassionate to yourself as a creative human being, as consumers, and then it's like something that radiates out of you. The moment you're compassionate, you start welcoming and engaging a world in a kinder way. And I think it's high time that we looked at the fashion industry, because we talked about this, how elitist the fashion industry had become. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, emotional. I believe that people are all wonderful, and that everybody deserves the luxury treatment that every customer or non-customer that comes our way is sent as comes as somebody that deserves utmost respect. And how can I put it? I believe if a person approaches others with that meditation, then like the best in us is brought forward. So if fashion as an industry could also always strive to move forward in that direction, that every human being, even every being, is worthy of that luxury treatment, then I think our world will be a much better place. Like, for example, if somebody walks into the most well placed and decorated store on the on the most wonderful street in the most wonderful place, whoever they are, they need to feel like the most important person in the world at that moment when they walk through the door. And I think that is real luxury, is to actually offer that utmost respect and admiration for everybody who walks through one's door. And that is also to do with the magazines, with editorials, with they should, with all the creativity and with all the attraction. I believe that needs to be present always there as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have very little time now, but I always, for me, as someone who's been writing about fashion, and I've been working with Vogue for 13 years, so I've done all the fancy stuff, and now I live in Bali in the jungles as a sustainability activist within fashion. I really feel moving forward to designers, I love talking about, yes, you can always make an amazing product. There's so much talent all around. You can do it, somebody else can do it. The product is beautiful. But now, moving forward, I think we have to understand that behind the product, there are real people. There are many hands that touch that one product. And behind the product and the people, there are these processes that take time. We should slow down those processes so we can value the product even more. And behind the process, there has to be a purpose. There has to be sort of a social impact of giving back. Because just beauty for beauty's sake now feels a little regressive, don't you think?
Yes, indeed. I believe so too, yeah. And I'm grateful that there's people like you who are really invested in bringing forward this, how should we say, or supporting this movement, this wave of compassion and change that's coming, indeed. I'm just grateful to have met you, to have had this wonderful opportunity. I think you basically covered all the questions that I've had for you on my wall here. But can I just ask you a little bit of a funny, perhaps not really funny, but something fun for the audience. You said yesterday that you had a totem of bracelets on your arm, and perhaps you could explain maybe a little more what that is and how.
Of course. I only wear things that have meaning. So these stones are from the volcano in Bali called Mount Agung. It's the most sacred volcano, and they're stones from there. These are Maori shells, which are sacred. This is from the Ganges in Varanasi in India. This is Cleopatra, which is my Egyptian energy. I can go on and on. There are many. This could take a long time. But that's the thing. I love wearing clothes and accessories that tell a story, tell me about a culture, and allow me to respect where they came from. And that, for me, is enjoying other people's difference. Mm-hmm. And the similarities that we have compassion together, but the difference is in the creativity and the products.
Indeed. But then it looks like there is a question for you on the chat. It says, what is the role of 3D in the traditional fashion industry?
What is the role of 3D?
In the traditional fashion industry.
Now we are talking about 3D and VR more than ever, especially in my part of the world, which, trust me, it's not like your part of the world where the European countries are so far ahead in this field. But I think, and I can see it already, that it is closing down the excesses of the supply chain, where you're sampling, you inventory, all of that, you're actually saving on that by going into technology and 3D. I have friends who are making jewelry now and working with 3D models. and so they're not going into excessive sampling in factories and deploying unnecessary hours and wastage and waste material, or creating too much, because now technology like 3D is allowing you to sort of craft your idea without material waste.
Yeah, great. So much less material waste, yeah, and burden. Oops. Okay, so I think now we're nearing the end of our mentorship.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your journey. And I can't thank Helsinki Fashion Week enough. Shout out to Evelyn. You know, I feel like we're a match made in heaven.
I'm just going to say that I would love to continue these conversations. I'm so grateful to have met you in this way. And perhaps this is the start of a beautiful friendship.
I believe so. I believe so. Wish you the best. And I'm sure I'll be hearing a lot and talking to you further as we go along. Yeah?
Of course, of course. I'm so inspired. And thank you, Evelyn, and thank you, Helsinki Fashion Week. And have a wonderful day, Bandana.
Thank you very much. I'm hitting the beach.
Yeah, indeed. Good for you. With your bracelets, all recharged from the sun. And the sun and salt is the best cleanser for the body.
You have a
Okay. Bye. Everybody.